Hey there, welcome to the DFS Build NFL edition. Taylor and I are going over the Week 5 Thursday Night Football game between the Falcons and the Buccaneers at DraftKings, and hopefully we can help you win some money. Taylor had some money calls on the doubleheader Monday Night Football slate, and I was very underweight on Ken Walker. So can you wonder how I did? Not great. But hopefully we can right the ship here and get things going. If we help you in any way, please give this video a like and also subscribe to the channel. Helps us know that we're doing something right and also helps you get alerted to future videos just like this. Also be on the lookout for our Week 5 main slate video. And then hopefully pretty soon we will be leaking into the NBA season. All right, Taylor, let's get into it here. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to just break down every play. And we're going to say whether or not we like them. And if we really like them, whether or not we're going to play them in the captain. I don't think we can trust ownership on this Wednesday. So everybody who's watching, definitely keep an eye on that. Look at updated ownership and kind of adapt as needed. We'll kind of talk about where we think ownership is going to end up going. There is some ownership trickling in at Roto Grinders, but I just don't think we can really fully trust it. So we'll just kind of discuss where we think everything is at and go from there. All right. So starting up top, Bijan Robinson obviously looks really good. He can smash. He has not really been that dude this year. He has not topped 17 fantasy points yet on the season. He just does not have like that massive workload that you expect he would. It's not small. It's just he is allowing Tyler Algier to cut into his workload, and Algier's kind of been the more efficient runner. And Bijan is banged up. He's supposedly ready to go for Thursday Night Football, but he does have a hamstring issue. So we've seen this before where the Falcons don't really say anything or he's active. And then like there was that one game last year where he did one snap and got like 0 points. So
different coaches though.
Yeah, I know. I don't think that's going to happen, but I do think the fact that he's already losing work to Algier and the fact that he's not 100%, those things combined are a little bit problematic. That said, I don't know how you can do a showdown slate and not have exposure to Bijan. So I definitely like him in the captain. And he would probably be a high priority flex play as well.
Yeah, he's easily my highest home captain as of now. I'm not really accounting for ownership at the moment, so that's subject to change. But I assume he's going to be the highest projected play. He's probably going to be the highest home captain. I do think the Algier thing is frustrating. It seems like Bijan is never fully unleashed for whatever reason, even with a new coach in there. But it is what it is. He's explosive. I think he had a touchdown called back the other day and was kind of shaky. So there's potential here. The matchup may not be great, but I'm okay with it. Algier, I don't think I'm getting too much, maybe a little bit in the flex. It's just hard to trust that. I do have like a little bit of Algier in the flex, but it's almost entirely Bijan. Even in non-captain lineups, I'm still playing Bijan in the flex.
Yeah, I mean, across the board, Bijan looks pretty good. Just some added context here. Vita Vea for the Buccaneers, the run stuffer up in the middle. He is questionable, but it looks like he's going to play. I just like to mention him anytime his status is in question, just because without him, the Buccaneers' run defense is significantly worse. And with him, they are a bit of a brick wall up front. But I don't think we need to worry about it too much, especially with Bijan, because he's pretty active as a receiver. In the first 2 games, he had 5 catches. No, he had 5 targets in the first 2 games, and he's had 4+ catches in 3 of 4 games. So he's getting a lot of dump off opportunities, even if the carries aren't really there, and he's not really getting a lot of touchdowns. But by the way, the Buccaneers give up the second most catches to running backs. So, I mean, Bijan's good. I don't see any reason not to like him. The only thing I would consider is maybe moving him over to the flex a little bit and getting different at captain, because he's probably going to be a top 2 owned captain on this slate. So next up is Chris Godwin, crushing on the year, 20 fantasy points per game. Obviously, he has a huge role. He's had 8+ targets in every game, 6+ catches in every game, and he's had a touchdown in 3 of 4 games. Naturally, that's led to pretty consistent production. When you're looking at Godwin and Mike Evans, who, by the way, is questionable, but it looks like he's also going to play, one of these dudes is going to get covered by AJ Terrell probably a good amount. I would imagine it's going to be Mike Evans. That is just a guess. So perhaps Godwin is even more appealing if he's kind of freed up and able to, run wild, so to speak. The Falcons don't really grade out they're kind of a middle of the pack matchup, so I'm not really worried about that. I think Godwin looks like a totally fine play.
Yeah, I mean, he and Evans are great. Godwin is the more safe play, of course, in a PPR format like this is. Evans more the big play, touchdown reliant guy. So wider range of outcomes for Evans, but the ceiling's obviously there, like we saw the other day. Both are great plays. Guys, I'm not afraid to play together. Obviously, in a one-game slate, you can fully stack Tampa Bay, the passing game. It goes beyond that, though. Cade Otton got 9 targets the other day. We just saw that, I think, what's his name? Jalen McMillan is out tomorrow night. So Sterling Shepard might be a cheapie to consider. He got 5 targets the other day. Giants legend, Sterling Shepard. Obviously, Evans and Godwin are the focal points, but I do think Otton and Sterling Shepard are kind of interesting, cheaper plays.
Yeah, I mean, you said Otton had what, 9 targets?
9 targets.
I mean, that's pretty good. Let's see what the matchup looks like. Falcons are bottom 10 against tight ends. Like you said earlier, we can't just live and die on matchups alone, but anytime there's a favorable matchup, I think we can definitely add that to the pile of reasons for wanting to use a guy. Worth noting, Otton hasn't scored a touchdown all year, but hey, last 2 games, he's had 8+ targets and 6+ catches. So as far as PPR goes, DraftKings is full PPR, full point per reception. I'm with you. Otton looks like a pretty good value at 6K at captain, and in the flex, he is only 4K. So, I mean, he doesn't really have the ceiling to make me love him in the captain, but absolutely at 4K, I like him in the flex. And Shepard is even better at 1.6K. 3 catches for 51 yards on 5 targets last week with no Jalen or Trey Palmer. He's also out. Then Shepard should be playing quite a bit. So I am 100% with you. Moving on here, let's just discuss both quarterbacks at the same time. We got Baker Mayfield, 9.6K in the. I'm sorry, let me flip it over. 14.4K in the captain. Cousins is a severe discount compared to him at only 12.9K. He has the better matchup by the numbers by quite a bit. The Buccaneers are bottom 6 against fantasy quarterbacks. On the year, Falcons are a little bit better, but kind of middle of the pack. I just think it's a pretty good spot for both guys, but I prefer Cousins here.
Yeah, the discount is useful for Cousins. I think they are favored in this game. Atlanta at home by a little bit. Obviously, that suits Baker pretty well if they are playing from behind. He threw 47 passes last week in a game they were leading for the most part. So ceiling is still there for him, even if they do jump out to a lead, the Buccaneers. I like them both quite a bit. On showdown slates with capable quarterbacks like these, I generally play both together for the most part.
Yep.
I prefer Cousins dollar for dollar, but he's also not as exciting. I think his ceiling is significantly lower, and the floor is also non-existent with him. At least Baker has a bit of rushing upside. Kirk Cousins has absolutely none whatsoever. So they're both fine plays. Not as excited as you about Kirk Cousins, though.
No, and you're not lying, man. He's had 12 or fewer fantasy points in 3 of 4 games, and he's not topped 18 on the year. So no doubt about it, the ceiling resides with Baker, and so does the floor. So he's a safer play. So the reason why I like Cousins a little bit more, though, obviously he's less expensive to slide into the captain and flex, but also he's got the better matchup by the numbers. But the biggest reason is going to be ownership. We don't see it here yet, but I would imagine Kirk Cousins is going to be like way less owned than Baker because of all those reasons, right? It's a more favorable spot across the board, and Baker's been way more productive. So people are going to look at Kirk Cousins' game logs and be like, I'm not captaining Kirk Cousins. So as far as captains go, I really like Kirk Cousins in the captain. And then obviously, like you said, I'm the same way. I like to play 2 quarterbacks together a lot, unless you have like 2 really, really good running backs to get to, then you can switch it up. Moving on, talking about these guys and their passing games. One guy we haven't mentioned yet, 2 guys actually, Kyle Pitts and Darnell Mooney. Pitts had a goose egg last time out. The only nice thing is he's not very expensive, and we do know he is a bit of an athletic beast. So in theory, he has untapped potential in this offense. Buccaneers pass defense in general is one you can attack. Let's see, against the tight end position, they've been middle of the pack, so nothing to be too afraid of. The only issue is Pitts is very hard to trust. There's no doubt about it, but that will be baked into his ownership too. He's not going to be very owned. He definitely is not going to be owned in captain. for tournaments, I kind of like him a little bit of a sprinkling of Pitts and captain. What about you?
Yeah, I'm probably getting to more Pitts and captain than I would be in flex.
Sure.
Just continuing to hunt that ceiling that's in theory there, but we've never actually seen in the NFL with him in 3 years now. But he, in theory, is a good play. They are just giving more targets to Mooney and McLeod every single game. Like McLeod has at least 3 in every game, at least 5 in 3 of those games, and at least 7 in 2 of those games. He's questionable, I think, but we'll see if he plays. Mooney, at least 6 targets in each of the last 3 games, just 1 touchdown, but they're just easier to trust. Like they're getting more of the reps as of now as the secondary receivers, kind of the co-leading receivers essentially with London. I don't think London's really necessarily separated himself. He's going to project the best by a lot, but I think I prefer the secondary receivers to Pitts, to be honest.
Yeah. I was going to say, we have not touched on Drake London yet. I will just note that he's been pretty consistent. He's not been like a dominant presence like everybody kind of thought he'd be. I think people just kind of looked at what Kirk Cousins did in Minnesota and looked at the target share with Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson and just figured Drake London, Kyle Pitts are going to be gods now, right? And I'm guilty of that too. I just expected that would be the case. So there is something to be said about Kirk Cousins coming off of a torn Achilles at 36 years old and also integrating himself into a new offense with players he's never played with before. So we're seeing like little doses of this working. Like with Drake London, he's had 6+ catches in each of his last 3 games. He's had 7+ targets in all those games, and he's scored twice. So we're seeing a little bit of it. So I'm definitely in on Drake London as far as I'm going to get a good amount of exposure to him in these contests. And I have no issue with going to him at captain. The only issue would be ownership. So we'll see where ownership is at and kind of adjust from there. But like you said, I have no issue with just going against the field here and betting on Mooney and or Pitts crushing randomly. And that's kind of what you have to do with Showdown. If you're just going to eat the chalk all the time at captain, I mean, you really got to find a way to get different in a big way in flex if you're going to do anything of merit, right? In GPPs. So I think the best way to do that usually is to hit on one of these high upside guys that nobody's going to be looking at. And then of course you still have the exposure to the Bijans and the quarterbacks and everybody else in flex. So that what happens there doesn't matter. What happens is if you get the right flex play or captain play and it delivers. All right, moving on. How about the running backs here on the other side for the Bucs? We got Rachaad White and Bucky Irving splitting reps. Rachaad White is still relevant, 12 touches last week. He has not been running efficiently. He ran better last week, but before last week, he didn't have a single game with a yards per carry average over 2.8. So like last year, he was a massive PPR god, and this year he's been kind of inconsistent in that regard. So just in general, it's tough to trust him because Bucky Irving came in at 10 carries off the bench, most carries so far for the rookie, and he also vultured a touchdown. So how are you feeling about these guys and differentiating, which one, stands out for you?
Yeah, White still played more snaps. It was a season low 58%, though. He topped 70 in each of the first 3 games. So clearly Irving is getting more work as the season goes on. As long as Rachaad White's just not going to be efficient, I expect that split to continue to shrink. But they did have identical 10 carry, 49-yard lines last week. Like you said, Irving got the touchdown. I don't know how projection systems are going to react to this. I still think White is going to be projecting better in general, just with the snaps and longer history and all that. And people rely heavily on projections, of course, to build these lineups. So I'm not sure if Irving's going to get much traction in the captain spot. Maybe more casual people will see that he's eating into White's workload and may play him in captain, but I would play him exclusively in flex. I might get to some Rachaad White in captain, just seeing that he's still on the field more overall, but I don't really feel good about it, to be honest.
This, to me, is just going to be an ownership play. I think the fact that they're now full-blown splitting reps, it's a guessing game as far as who is going to hit. Rachaad White has not been an efficient runner. Bucky Irving has been better in that regard, and they're losing nothing at receiver when Bucky Irving is in there. Worth noting, the Falcons, they are good against the run. They've only allowed 1 touchdown on the season, but they have been giving up some production to running backs as receivers. They are bottom 10 in catches allowed. They have allowed 20 on the year. So that doesn't really necessarily mean anything, but just because Rachaad White has been a PPR guy in the past, and they do use the running backs, the backfield as receivers too. So I think that's worth noting. But yeah, it's going to be, for me, it's going to come down to who's like significantly less owned. I would imagine just based off of the snap percentage and who Rachaad White has been, I would imagine he's going to carry a little bit more ownership. So I'd probably lean Bucky Irving, but I would definitely wait until we can see for sure where the ownership lies. But I think they're both fine in captain. Anytime guys are sharing the workload, it's a little bit scary to commit to one, but I think they both do possess a little bit of a ceiling. While we're on the running backs, why don't you offer your thoughts on Algier? Obviously, there's the slight possibility Bijan doesn't play on a short week, and there's also the possibility Bijan gets hurt in the game. But even beyond those two things, Algier is cutting into his workload. Let's see, where was he last week? Where is he on here, actually? Okay, here he is. He had 8 carries for 60 yards, hyper efficient runner. He's had more than 4.6 yards per carry in every game this year. So it seems like he's kind of just made them put him on the field. So how are you looking at him regardless of Bijan's status?
I'm not really looking to prioritize him at all. He did play a season high 38% of the snaps last week, but it's just Bijan. I'm certainly not going to play them together. I don't think.
No.
It's not the craziest thing in the world. Just hoping, like with the Lions the other day, you can see both running backs get into the end zone, and then you
a little bit different though, probably.
I mean, you never know. It's one
Right.
game. Like, they can both score in one game, and then you're optimal that way. But
true.
Personally, that's not what I'm doing. Just going to side pretty heavily with Bijan, like everyone else, and hope Tyler Algier goes away.
Yeah, what is this price in the flex? 4.8. I think the flex at 4.8, that's totally viable. I think captaining Algier, short of Bijan being out, seems silly. Obviously, anything can happen. It's a showdown. You literally can do whatever you want.
If Bijan is out, then Algier is like the smash value of the slate.
Right.
You play
so
him everywhere.
If that happens, you have to have Algier. But as it stands, I think he's totally fine as a flex at 4.8. Let's see. Moving on to who else do we not? I think we pretty much covered everybody. There is Ray McLeod. He is limited in practice and questionable for this game. He has had a role. If you're looking at guys like Pitts and Mooney as secondary options behind Drake London, I think we have to at least mention that McLeod plays a good amount of the game, and he's had 5+ targets in 3 of 4 games. Last week he had 11.2 fantasy points, best game of the year. So if he's out there, he is kind of involved. I do have interest in him at 3.4K if he is. If he is not, I think that just gets me more on Mooney and Pitts. Who else? Who would be stepping up here for them? Possibly
Darrell Hodge.
Yeah, maybe Casey Washington. He's been inactive though, so keep an eye on that. If McLeod is out, we can look to maybe a secondary option for a punt, because
McLeod has played at least 95% of the snaps in 3 games in a row. Like, he is just out there all the time. Mooney's been over 90 every game. McLeod.
Yeah. So like I said, he's been playing a lot. So if he is not out there, obviously that could change things a little bit. Maybe they would not roll out 3 wide receivers as often. Maybe they do just like run as much as possible and those running backs smash. Who knows? But yeah, keep an eye on his status. That is pretty significant to me. I think 3.4K for a guy who plays that much is a very nice flex play. And I would sprinkle him into the captain, just because I think if it's a lower scoring game and he gets 11 fantasy points, you can definitely win with that, depending on what happens. But he's had a couple opportunities too that did not go his way. Like he was targeting the end zone in the first 2 weeks and it just didn't happen. So if he would have hit that, maybe he would have been displaying more of a ceiling. All right, let's go to some deeper punts. You mentioned Sterling Shepard. He's probably the best punt on the showdown slate at 1.6K. Because he's going to be out there and getting the ball thrown his way, you can sprinkle him into the captain for sure. I don't have a problem with that, but obviously it just looks like a really good flex play. Is there anybody else that you're seeing as a true punt that stands out?
No, that kind of wraps it up. Like, these teams are kind of concentrated. Like I said, Atlanta's receivers, they pretty much play the same 3 guys the entire game. And then Pitts is on the field not doing anything, but unless McLeod is out, maybe you can dive for Kaderil Hodge, but that's really the only scenario I can see getting into any of the true punts.
Yeah, before we wrap it up, let's also talk about the defenses and kickers. I am pretty into both kickers. These offenses are both decent, but they also settle for field goals quite a bit. Younghoe Koo is one of the better kickers in the league. He has not missed a field goal on the season, and he has a pretty big leg. Also, this game is in a dome, which is helpful for the kickers. No wind, and you just have no other elements stopping them from being accurate. So I think he looks really, really good. He's had 10 plus fantasy points in 2 of his 4 games on the year. And then you have the Chase McLaughlin, 10 plus fantasy points in 3 of his 4 games. Again, Buccaneers move the ball really well, get into scoring position quite a bit. And he has also not missed a single field goal on the year. So I don't have a problem with getting either of these guys in. I don't really like to tie up my spots with 2 kickers. So I would just kind of go either or in lineups. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to know the randomness of kickers and defenses. Like, it's a complete toss-up coin flip type thing. So Tampa Bay is an underdog, which makes Koo, I guess, the slightly better play. I assume he's more expensive than McLaughlin, though, a little bit. So whatever.
Yeah, well, when it comes to the defenses, like I don't really see. Okay, I'll say 2 things. First, Kirk Cousins is not very mobile, so the Tampa Bay pass rush absolutely could tee off on him here.
These guys also both throw picks, so it's pretty interesting. Yeah.
Not very predictive, but that's worth noting for sure. Yeah, Kirk Cousins has this whole like primetime narrative where he, really historically has not been very good in primetime. That feels a little bit noisy. But for me, defenses, what I'm doing is I'm looking at ownership. If they're going to come in and these defenses are not going to be owned at all, I will absolutely go overweight on the defense. I just like to play the opposite side of where the field views the defenses. And the kickers, Koo is probably my lean just because I just know more about him as far as the kickers go. I think he's averaging more fantasy points per game. He's at home. He's in a dome. The offense is good. I just think he feels a little bit safer. So just as a quick recap, as we let you go here, obviously we have a couple guys to keep an eye on. Mike Evans, Bijan. It looks like they're going to play, but just keep an eye on their statuses. If Bijan is out, Algier is a lock. If Mike Evans is out, obviously Chris Godwin would be a lock, and then we can kind of trickle it down from there. Taylor mentioned Cade Otton and Sterling Shepard as really good values, and I agree with Jalen McMillan and Trey Palmer both out for this game. And I'd also keep an eye on Ray McLeod's status. If he's in, he's a really good flex play at 3.4K. If he is out, we can get gross and dive down with Kaderil Hodge and whoever else ends up playing for the Falcons. Any last words, Taylor, before we sign off?
Nope.
All righty. All right. Well, thanks for joining us and listening to us talk about the Falcons and Buccaneers here. Hopefully you can glean something from what we said and it helps you win big at DraftKings this week. If we did help you in any way, please like the video and also subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching and good luck.